Red Mesa stretched endlessly beneath the twin suns, a vast desert of red rocks, deep canyons, and winds that whispered secrets to anyone who would listen. On this frontier planet, only the toughest survived, and none were tougher than Jace Carson. He was a man of few words, preferring the company of his livestock and the open sky to the chatter of settlements. His ranch, carved from the rugged cliffs, was a small patch of green in a sea of red, supported by solar panels, hover fences, and a handful of energy-powered tools. Jace rode his hoverbike across the canyon plains, scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. The raiders had been getting bolder lately, attacking livestock and scavenging what they could. But Jace wasn't afraid. He had faced storms, wild creatures, and hostile land before. Nothing could break his calm. As he approached a narrow canyon, his eyes caught a sudden movement. A small, struggling shape was wedged between two jagged rocks. Jace slowed his bike, curiosity mixed with caution. It was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. No larger than a small dog, with soft golden fur, luminous eyes, and tiny wings folded against its body. It whimpered pitifully. Jace dismounted and carefully approached. The creature's tiny claws scratched at the rock walls, trying to free itself. He gently lifted it, cradling it in his arms. The creature's eyes met his, wide and fearful, but slowly trusting. "Don't worry, little one," Jace murmured. "I've got you." He examined the creature. Its wings were bruised, and its breathing was shallow. Jace's mind raced. On this planet, strange creatures were common, but few were this delicate. He needed to get it somewhere safe. Back at his ranch, Jace cleaned a small enclosure and made a soft bed from cloth and dried grass. He fed the creature with a nutrient gel he used for his livestock, watching as it slowly regained strength. Night fell, and the twin moons rose over Red Mesa, bathing the desert in a silver glow. Jace sat beside the enclosure, tired, but alert. He could hear distant howls from desert predators, but he felt no fear. Something about this creature made him feel responsible, needed. As he dozed in the soft chair, a shadow moved on the cliff above. Jace's eyes snapped open. A figure stood at the edge, silent, watching. A woman, tall, strong, with dark hair pulled back in braids, her eyes sharp as the desert hawk. She wore clothing of deep red and brown, blending with the canyon rocks. Jace instinctively reached for his blaster, but he didn't raise it. There was something in her stance, confidence, authority, and curiosity. "Who are you?" Jace called, his voice steady but wary. The woman did not answer immediately. She tilted her head, studying him. Then she spoke, her voice firm but calm. "You've taken something that belongs to us." Jace frowned. "I found it in the canyon. It was trapped." "I didn't." She stepped closer, and Jace noticed the symbols etched on her clothing, signs of the Apache descendant colony that had lived on Red Mesa for generations. Her people were guardians of the land and all its creatures. "I know what you did," she said. "You saved it." Jace raised an eyebrow. Then, "Why are you here?" "To see the one who saved my baby," she said simply. Her eyes softened, but there was still caution there. "You are brave. Human." Not many would have stopped to help. Jace studied her carefully. Humans were rare out here, but her presence had a purpose. He nodded slowly. "My name is Jace Carson," he said. "And I don't usually get visitors. Least of all ones who climb cliffs silently." She allowed herself a small smile. "I am a huli. And this baby, it means everything to me and my people." Jace looked down at the creature in the enclosure. It stirred, stretching its tiny wings, blinking at him with trust-filled eyes. "It's safe here," Jace assured her. "It was in danger. I couldn't leave it there." Ahuli studied him for a long moment. She could see his honesty, his courage, and a surprising gentleness. Many humans were reckless, selfish, or weak, but this one, he was different. "You have a good heart, Jace Carson," she said quietly, "and a strong hand. Perhaps We will see what more you are capable of." Before Jace could respond, a distant roar echoed across the canyon. Dust rose in the wind, carrying the smell of danger. Jace's hand went instinctively to his blaster. Ahuli's eyes narrowed. "They are coming," she said. "The raiders. They have sensed the baby." Jace cursed under his breath. Raiders never gave anyone a moment of peace. But he felt no fear, only resolve. He had defended his ranch before, and he would defend this creature as well. "Then we prepare," he said. "Whatever comes, we'll be ready." Together, they checked the ranch defenses. Jace adjusted the energy turrets and hover fence circuits, while Ahuli moved with fluid grace, setting traps and warning signals. Despite their different styles, they worked in perfect sync, each impressed by the other's skill. The twin moons rose higher, casting eerie shadows across the rocks. The desert wind carried strange, whispering sounds. But Jace felt alive. He was not alone. Not anymore. Someone shared the burden and the honor of protecting life. Hours passed. The distant howls grew closer, and Jace could see figures moving against the moonlight. Raiders, armed with scavenged weapons and mechanical creatures, advanced toward the ranch. Jace and Ahuli took their positions. He checked his blaster, scanning the canyon for ambush points. She readied a series of signal traps and energy nets. The creature, sensing the tension, huddled in its enclosure but made a small, determined chirping noise. "They trust us," Ahuli said softly. Jace nodded. "Then, we won't fail them." The raiders appeared at the canyon's edge, their eyes gleaming with greed and malice. Jace's finger tightened on the trigger. Ahuli's stance was firm, her eyes cold and sharp. And then, as the first shots rang out, Jace realized something. He had lived his life alone, trusting only himself. But tonight, for the first time, he felt part of something larger. Courage, strength, and loyalty were not just his own, they were shared. As the battle for the baby began, Jace and Ahuli stood together, two guardians against the darkness. And in that moment, beneath the twin moons of Red Mesa, something unspoken passed between them, a spark of respect, trust, and perhaps the first hint of something more. The raiders would not leave easily. But neither would they. Not with Jace Carson, the lone human cowboy, and Ahuli, the fierce protector of her people, standing together. And as the night deepened, the desert held its breath, watching the first chapter of a story that would bind two hearts and the fate of a baby destined to change everything. The desert morning light broke over Red Mesa, painting the jagged rocks in shades of gold and crimson. The wind had calmed, but the tension from the previous night lingered. Jace Carson sat outside his ranch, cleaning his blaster and thinking about the strange woman who had appeared on the cliffs. Ahuli, the warrior of the Apache descendant colony. He wasn't used to visitors. Solitude had been his life for years. But the way she had moved, the calm confidence in her eyes, and the quiet power in her voice had left an impression. And now, the baby creature chirped softly beside him, a tiny bundle of trust and innocence. A movement on the horizon caught Jace's attention. It wasn't the raiders. They would not appear in the full daylight. No, it was something else. A hover sled, glinting in the sun, approached from the cliffs above. Jace stood, hand on his blaster, ready. Ahuli stepped out of the shadow behind him, silent as a desert breeze. She had returned without warning, her eyes scanning the skies and canyon edges. "You shouldn't be alone with it," she said quietly, pointing toward the baby nestled in its enclosure. "There are eyes everywhere. Some are not friendly." Jace nodded. "I know, but I can handle it." Ahuli's eyes softened slightly. She studied him for a long moment, then said, "Your hands are gentle for a warrior, but your heart is different. You care, even for what is not yours." Jace shrugged. "It was in danger. Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone," she said. "Humans often take what belongs to others or destroy it. But you saved it." Her words struck him. For the first time in years, someone recognized something beyond his strength, beyond his survival skills. Someone saw his heart. "I'm a huli," she continued, "and this is my baby." Jace turned his gaze toward the small creature. Its wings were beginning to heal, and it moved with curiosity. "It's lucky to have you," he said. Ahuli nodded. "It is lucky that you were here too." Many would have ignored its cries. They stood together in silence for a few moments, watching the desert stretch endlessly before them. Then, a sudden screech broke the quiet. Both Jace and Ahuli turned sharply. A group of raiders appeared on the far ridge, mounted on scavenged hover beasts. Their weapons gleamed in the sunlight. They had come for the baby. Jace cursed under his breath. "They're persistent." Ahuli's eyes narrowed. "And dangerous. We must act carefully." Together, they moved quickly, preparing the ranch for defense. Jace adjusted the hover fences, checking the energy circuits. Ahuli moved with precision, setting traps along the canyon's natural paths. Every rock, every shadow, was a potential threat, and she knew how to use them. The raiders advanced cautiously, testing the defenses. Their leader, a tall man with a jagged scar across his face, shouted commands to his crew. "Bring it down. That creature is worth more than all your lives combined." Jace stepped forward, raising his blaster. "Not today," he muttered. The first raider charged, but Ahuli's trap caught him in a net of energy strands, lifting him off the ground. Another raider fired, and Jace deflected the blast with a swift maneuver, sending sparks flying. "Not bad," Ahuli said, a small smile forming on her lips. "You're not bad yourself," Jace replied, keeping his focus on the next attacker. For hours, they fought side by side, blending human ingenuity and Apache descendant skill. Jace's clever traps and quick thinking surprised the raiders, while Ahuli's precise movements and tactical knowledge turned the tide in their favor. The baby chirped from its enclosure, sensing the battle, but remaining safe under their watch. Finally, the raiders retreated, leaving behind a trail of smoke and frustration. Their leader shouted a final warning. "This isn't over, human! We will return!" Jace lowered his blaster, breathing heavily. Ahuli approached, her eyes meeting his. "You fought well," she said quietly. "Your courage is admirable." "On one," Jace shrugged. "I just did what needed to be done." Ahuli shook her head, smiling. "It is more than that. You risked yourself for something smaller, weaker, something that could not defend itself. That is rare." "Rare?" Jace looked away, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He had spent his life surviving, fighting, and working alone. No one had ever recognized the quiet strength in what he did. "They'll come back," Ahuli said, her voice serious again. "We must prepare for the next time. They will not give up." Jace nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The afternoon passed with quiet work. They repaired the defenses, reinforced the enclosure, and shared a meal of dried rations and water. Ahuli told stories of her people, their history on Red Mesa, and the importance of the baby. "The baby is not just a creature," she explained. "It is a symbol, a bridge between us and the land, a sign of hope. If it is harmed, it affects more than just me. It affects all of us." Jace listened, fascinated. Humans often saw the world in terms of survival and resources, but Ahuli and her people had a deep connection with life, respect for every being. He felt a strange admiration and something deeper, a pull he hadn't expected. "You understand its value," she said, studying him, "and yet, you still fight for it, without asking for anything in return." Jace shrugged again. "I fight because it's right. Because someone has to." Ahuli's expression softened further. "Then you have my respect, Jace Carson. And perhaps, my trust." Night fell once more over Red Mesa. The twin moons rose, casting silver light across the desert. Jace and Ahuli sat near the enclosure, watching the baby sleep peacefully. "I've never seen someone like you," Ahuli said softly. "Strong, brave, and yet gentle. Humans often forget that gentleness can be a strength." Jace smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm not like most humans. You are different," she said, looking into his eyes. "And that makes all the difference." A quiet bond had formed between them, one that neither had expected. Trust, respect, and perhaps the first hints of friendship or something more grew in the shared silence. Suddenly, a distant rumble shook the canyon. Jace and Ahuli sprang to their feet. The desert tremor was no natural event. It was the raiders, returning faster and in greater numbers than before. "They are coming," Ahuli said, her voice calm but firm. "We must act quickly." Jace gritted his teeth. "Then we fight. Together." Together. The night was about to become a test of courage, skill, and trust. And as they prepared for the battle ahead, both knew one thing. They were no longer alone. They had each other, and the baby that had brought them together. In the silence before the storm, Red Mesa held its breath. The wind whispering secrets of courage, loyalty, and the beginnings of a bond that could survive any danger. Jace glanced at Ahuli, and she nodded in understanding. Whatever came next, they would face it together, human and warrior, cowboy and protector, united by honor, bravery, and the fragile life that had drawn them together. The desert night stretched endlessly. But for Jace, something had changed. Solitude was no longer a shield, and for the first time, he wondered if perhaps the heart could be as powerful as the hand that wielded a blaster. The twin moons of Red Mesa hung high in the night sky, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs and glowing canyon floors. The desert was quiet now, but both Jace Carson and Ahuli knew it was a fragile peace. The raiders had retreated for now, but they would return and stronger. Jace sat near the small enclosure where the baby rested. Its golden fur glimmered in the moonlight as it slept. Tiny wings curled gently against its body. Jace reached out and stroked its head softly. "You're safe," he whispered, even though he knew the danger had not passed. Ahuli approached silently, her boots making no sound on the desert rocks. She knelt beside Jace, her dark eyes reflecting both the moonlight and the weight of responsibility she carried. "We must be ready for whatever comes," she said softly. "They will not give up easily." Jace nodded, meeting her gaze. "We'll be ready, together." For the first time, they allowed themselves a brief moment of calm. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet companionship as the desert night wrapped around them. Jace spoke of his life on Red Mesa, surviving alone, and the harsh lessons he had learned. Ahuli told of her people, the Apache descendant colony, their connection to the land, and the importance of the baby she protected. "You understand its value," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "And yet you still risk your life for it." "I do what is right," Jace said simply, "no matter the cost." Ahuli studied him, her expression softening. "Then you are a man unlike any other I have met, brave and true." Before either could speak further, the quiet was broken by a distant rumble. Dust and small rocks tumbled down the cliffs as Jace and Ahuli sprang to their feet. The raiders had returned, and in greater numbers than before. "They're coming," Ahuli said, her voice steady, but her eyes were sharp and alert. Jace loaded his blaster and checked the energy turrets along the fence. "Then, let's give them a welcome they won't forget." The raiders charged, riding their scavenged hoverbeasts, weapons glinting in the moonlight. Sparks flew as the first shots rang out. Jace moved with practiced precision, dodging attacks and firing at the advancing enemies. His blaster shots struck true, hitting the energy cores of the raiders' weapons and disabling their hover mounts. Ahuli moved like a shadow, her agility and skill unmatched. She set energy traps that lifted raiders off the ground and sent them tumbling harmlessly into the canyon below. Every movement was calculated, graceful, and deadly. Together, Jace and Ahuli formed a seamless team, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Jace's ingenuity and quick thinking, combined with Ahuli's precision and experience, made them almost unstoppable. The baby chirped from its enclosure, sensing the danger but remaining safe. It fluttered its tiny wings, as if cheering them on. Hours passed, the desert echoing with the sounds of battle blaster fire, shouted commands, and the clash of hover mounts against traps. The raiders were relentless, but Jace and Ahuli were relentless too. "You fight well, human," Ahuli said, pausing for a moment as she reloaded her energy pistol. "You're not too bad yourself," Jace replied, giving her a small grin despite the exhaustion and tension. The battle reached its climax when the raiders' leader appeared, towering above the rest, his scarred face twisted with anger. He raised a plasma rifle and aimed directly at the baby's enclosure. Jace's heart skipped a beat. "Not on my watch," he growled. He fired a precise shot that disabled the weapon, sending it sparking to the ground. Ahuli moved swiftly, leaping onto a rock formation to face the leader directly. With a combination of martial skill and clever traps, she forced him to retreat, even as Jace provided cover. The remaining raiders, seeing their leader defeated, fled into the night, leaving behind broken hover mounts and discarded weapons. Breathing heavily, Jace lowered his blaster. "Is it over?" Ahuli surveyed the battlefield, her eyes still sharp. Then she nodded. "For now. But they will return. Stronger." Jace glanced at her, impressed by her courage and skill. "We'll be ready next time, too." They worked together to repair the ranch and reinforce the baby's enclosure. The bond between them grew stronger with every shared task, every narrow escape, every moment of trust. They learned to anticipate each other's moves without words, an unspoken understanding forming between them. When the work was done, they sat together near the edge of a canyon, watching the twin moons rise once more. The desert was calm again, peaceful for the first time in what felt like ages. "You are different from others," Ahuli said quietly, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Humans often act for themselves. But you act for what is right, even when it is difficult." Jace looked at her, feeling something he had not felt in years, a connection, a warmth, a spark. "I do what I must, and tonight, it seems I've found someone worth trusting." Ahuli's gaze softened. "Then you have my trust, Jace Carson. And perhaps, more than that." He turned to look at her, surprised by the weight in her words. She was not just a warrior. She was a person of depth, honor, and compassion. He realized that their shared fight had created more than just survival, it had created a bond. As they sat in silence, the baby stirred, stretching its wings and chirping softly. It looked at Jace and Ahuli, then curled back to rest. The tiny life had become the center of a connection that neither of them could ignore, a bond forged in fire, trust, and courage. Night deepened, but neither moved. The desert around them seemed alive with possibilities, the stars above shining like distant beacons. They spoke little, yet their hearts communicated more than words ever could. Finally, Ahuli stood and stretched, her movements graceful even in exhaustion. "We have a long road ahead," she said. "The raiders will return, and we must be prepared. But tonight we survived." Together, Jace stood as well, brushing dust from his coat. "Together," he echoed. For the first time, he felt that solitude was not the only way to survive. Together, they could be stronger, braver, and perhaps happier. They patrolled the ranch once more, checking every fence and trap, making sure the baby was safe. The desert was quiet, save for the distant howl of a desert creature, and the soft chirping from the enclosure. As the night stretched on, Jace found himself glancing at Ahuli more than once, noticing the way her eyes reflected the moonlight, the determination in her stance, and the strength in her hands. She was remarkable, a warrior unlike any he had met, and for reasons he did not fully understand. He felt a pull toward her, a desire to protect, to share, and to be close. Ahuli, too, watched him, noting his courage, intelligence, and gentle heart. He was not like the humans who had come before, seeking only profit or conquest. He was different. He cared, and that mattered more than anything. Eventually, they returned to the enclosure, where the baby had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep. Jace gently stroked its head, and Ahuli joined him, her hand brushing against his. They exchanged a quiet look, a shared acknowledgement of what they had achieved, what they had survived, and the trust they had built. In the distance, the desert wind carried a warning, a promise of future challenges. But for now, Jace and Ahuli allowed themselves a moment of peace. The bond forged in fire, courage, and shared responsibility had taken root, and neither could ignore it. Tonight, they were not just protector and warrior. They were partners, allies, friends, and perhaps, in time, something more. The twin moons rose higher, bathing Red Mesa in silver light. Somewhere in the desert, the raiders planned their next move. But Jace and Ahuli, united by trust, courage, and a tiny life that had brought them together, were ready. Together, they would face whatever came next. And in the silence of the desert, under the watchful eyes of the stars, a new chapter began, one of courage, loyalty, and the beginnings of a bond that would not easily be broken. The sun rose over Red Mesa, casting golden light across the jagged cliffs and endless desert plains. The morning wind carried a faint scent of smoke, a warning of danger yet to come. Jace Carson stood at the edge of his ranch, scanning the horizon. The night had been quiet, almost peaceful. But he knew better. Raiders were patient, they waited for the perfect moment to strike again. Ahuli approached, her boots kicking up dust as she moved. Her eyes were sharp, alert, and thoughtful. "They will return," she said quietly, "stronger, smarter. They've learned from their last defeat." Jace nodded, adjusting his blaster strap. "Then we need to be ready. Every trap, every fence, every move." Ahuli studied him for a moment. "You fight well, human. But will you fight for what is not yours? For the baby? For me? For my people?" Jace paused, meeting her gaze. "I fight because it is right. Because someone must. And because I trust you. Together, we can protect it." Her eyes softened, but there was a seriousness there that made Jace realize this was more than a question of skill, it was a test of loyalty. The day passed in preparation. Jace and Ahuli repaired the ranch defenses, strengthened the baby's enclosure, and set clever traps along the canyon paths. The baby watched them, curious but safe, sensing the care and determination surrounding it. By mid-afternoon, the horizon darkened with dust. Raiders were approaching, more than before, their numbers and weapons upgraded. Jace felt the familiar tension building in his chest. He checked his blaster one more time. "Here they come," he muttered. Ahuli's voice was calm but firm. "Stay close. Watch the baby. Trust in each other." The raiders charged across the canyon floor, their hover beasts kicking up clouds of dust. Their leader, the scarred man from before, rode at the front, a cruel smile on his face. "This time, human," he shouted, "you will not stop us." Jace and Ahuli moved in perfect sync. He fired at the leading raiders, disabling weapons and sending hover beasts tumbling. She leapt gracefully across rocks, setting traps that ensnared the attackers with precision. But this time, the raiders were smarter. They avoided the traps, splitting into groups, and attacking from multiple directions. Jace realized quickly that this was no longer a simple defense, it was a battle of wits, strategy, and endurance. "Watch the left canyon," Ahuli shouted. "They're flanking us." Jace fired rapidly, using the terrain to his advantage. He created barriers of dust and rocks, forcing the raiders into narrow paths where Ahuli's traps awaited. Together, they moved like a single unit, anticipating each other's actions without speaking. Despite their skill, the raiders pressed hard. One of them broke through a fence and rushed toward the baby's enclosure. Jace reacted instantly, tackling the raider, and knocking him away. The baby chirped loudly, sensing the danger. And Ahuli moved to secure the creature, her hands gentle but firm. "Are you okay?" Jace asked, checking the baby. "It's fine," Ahuli replied, her eyes meeting his. "Thanks to you." The battle continued for hours. The desert shook with the sounds of blaster fire, crashing hover beasts, and shouted commands. Jace and Ahuli worked tirelessly, their trust in each other growing stronger with every move. At one point, the raiders' leader appeared near the enclosure, aiming a plasma rifle directly at the baby. Jace froze for a heartbeat, fear and anger mixing in his chest. Ahuli acted instantly, intercepting him with a swift maneuver that disarmed the leader and forced him back. "You are brave," she said quietly to Jace, once the danger had passed. "But courage alone is not enough. Trust and loyalty, those are what matter." Jace nodded, feeling a deep respect for her. "I trust you, Ahuli. I'll always protect the baby, and you." The raiders finally began to retreat, battered and frustrated. Their leader roared one last warning. "This is not over. We will return, and next time, you will not survive." Ahuli watched them leave, her eyes steady. "They will try again," she said. "But we are ready, and we will fight as one." Jace wiped sweat from his brow, exhausted but unbroken. "Together," he said, looking at her. They returned to the enclosure, where the baby nestled safely in the soft bedding. Jace stroked its head gently, and Ahuli joined him, her hand brushing against his. A silent understanding passed between them, a bond forged through danger, courage, and trust. "You are different from others, Jace," Ahuli said softly. "You fight for what is right, not for glory or reward. That is rare." "I do what I must," Jace replied. "And tonight, I learned something more. I learned what it means to fight for someone else, to protect life that isn't yours, and to trust someone fully." Ahuli smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. "Then you have passed the test," she said. "Not of skill, but of heart. And now, you are part of this. Of us. Of me." Jace felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. He had always survived alone, relying only on his strength and wit, but now, he realized that courage shared, and trust given, created a power far greater than any weapon. The night deepened, and Red Mesa was calm once more. The desert seemed to breathe, as if acknowledging the bond between the human cowboy and the Apache descendant warrior. They sat together in silence, watching the baby sleep peacefully, knowing that their fight was not yet over, but that they were ready for whatever came. For the first time in his life, Jace felt that solitude was not the only way to survive. With Ahuli by his side, and trust in each other's strength and heart, he felt invincible. And for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future not of loneliness, but of partnership, courage, and shared life. Somewhere in the desert, the raiders were planning their next attack. But Jace and Ahuli were no longer just two individuals, they were a team, and in that unity, they had found strength, hope, and the beginnings of something that went beyond survival. Ahuli looked at Jace, her eyes soft yet determined. "The next time they come, we will be ready. Together, always." "Always," Jace agreed, his gaze meeting hers with understanding and respect. And as the twin moons of Red Mesa rose higher, bathing the canyon in silver light, a new chapter unfolded. A chapter of courage, trust, and loyalty, tested by fire, where hearts and lives were bound together by the smallest, most fragile life that had brought them together. Tonight, they were not just protector and warrior. They were partners, allies, friends, and perhaps, in time, something more. The desert was silent once more, holding its breath for the challenges to come, but also witnessing the bond forged in battle. A bond stronger than any fear, greater than any danger, and as enduring as the twin moons that watched over Red Mesa. Red Mesa's dawn broke in a blaze of gold and red. The desert seemed peaceful, almost serene. But Jace Carson knew better. The raiders had retreated before, but their shadow lingered like a dark cloud. Today, he and Ahuli would ensure it vanished for good. Jace stood at the edge of the canyon, surveying the terrain. The sun reflected off his blaster, and his hoverbike rested nearby, ready for action. Beside him, Ahuli adjusted her armor, her dark eyes scanning the horizon with sharp focus. "We know they are coming," she said quietly. "This time, they will bring everything they have. But we will be ready." Jace nodded. "We've faced them before. We know their tactics. And we have each other." Ahuli allowed herself a faint smile. Together. Always. They had spent days preparing. The ranch was fortified beyond anything the raiders had seen. Energy traps lined the canyon paths, reinforced barriers protected the baby, and clever decoys were set to confuse any attacker. Every corner, every shadow, had been accounted for. The baby stirred in its enclosure, stretching its tiny wings and letting out a soft chirp. Jace crouched beside it, brushing his hand across its soft golden fur. "We're going to keep you safe," he whispered. The baby chirped again, as if understanding, and nuzzled against his palm. Ahuli joined them, kneeling beside Jace. "It trusts us," she said softly. "And that is why we must succeed. Not just for us, but for it, for my people, for the desert." Hours passed, and then the horizon darkened with movement. Raiders. Not just a handful this time, they came in dozens, their scavenged hover beasts pounding across the canyon floor. Weapons ready. Faces twisted with greed and anger. Their leader, scarred and fierce, rode at the front, shouting commands that echoed across the cliffs. Jace checked his blaster and energy grenades, his mind focused. "Let's finish this," he said. Ahuli's eyes sparkled with determination. Together, the battle began with a roar. Raiders charged, scattering into groups, trying to flank the ranch from multiple directions. Jace moved quickly, firing precise shots, disabling weapons, and forcing their mounts to stumble. Ahuli leapt across rocks and canyon ledges, setting energy traps that lifted raiders high into the air before dropping them harmlessly into sand pits below. They moved like a single unit, anticipating each other's actions. Jace's ingenuity complemented Ahuli's skill, and every raider who thought they could outsmart them found themselves ensnared by clever tactics and rapid reactions. The baby chirped excitedly from its enclosure, sensing the chaos but safe under their vigilant eyes. Jace paused briefly to make sure it was unharmed, his heart swelling with protective care. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. The raiders regrouped and launched a final assault, focusing on the baby's enclosure. Jace's heart pounded, but he did not falter. He rushed forward, tackling the lead raider and sending him tumbling into a trap. Ahuli followed, disarming the remaining attackers with precise strikes and calculated maneuvers. The scarred leader, seeing his forces defeated, roared in frustration. He aimed his plasma rifle at the baby, but Ahuli acted with lightning speed, knocking the weapon aside and using her agility to subdue him. Jace fired a careful shot that disabled the raider's energy core, leaving him powerless. The remaining raiders, seeing their leader captured and their plans failing, fled across the canyon, their hover beasts kicking up clouds of dust. Red Mesa was quiet again, save for the soft wind and the chirps of desert creatures. Jace lowered his blaster, breathing heavily. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice still tense from the fight. Ahuli nodded, her eyes softening. "For now, they will not return for a long time. And when they do, we will be ready again. Together." Jace glanced at her, a smile forming despite the exhaustion. Together. The baby chirped and fluttered its tiny wings, as if celebrating the victory. Jace reached out, picking it up gently, and handed it to Ahuli. She cradled it, her eyes full of relief and joy. "You did well," she said softly to Jace, meeting his gaze. "You are brave, strong, and my heart trusts you." Jace's chest tightened, He had lived a life of solitude, relying only on himself, but now he felt something entirely new: connection, admiration, and the beginnings of love. Ahuli, he stopped, realizing words were not enough. Instead, he simply reached out, brushing her hand with his, a silent promise that he would always protect her and the baby. She smiled, understanding him without words. In that moment, the battle, the dangers, and the deserts of Red Mesa faded. There was only trust, courage, and the bond between them. They returned to the ranch together, the baby nestled safely between them. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light across the desert and highlighting the red rocks and golden sands. The twin moons, still faintly visible in the morning sky, seemed to watch over them, a quiet blessing. Ahuli turned to Jace, her voice gentle but steady. "This is more than a victory. It is a beginning. We have fought together, protected life together, and trusted each other. And now..." Her words trailed off, leaving the meaning hanging in the air. Jace took her hand in his, holding it firmly. "Now, we move forward together," he said. "No more solitude. No more fighting alone. Whatever comes, we face it as one." She nodded, her eyes shining. Together, always. Days passed, and Red Mesa began to heal. The ranch flourished, strengthened by their combined efforts. The baby grew stronger, exploring the rocks and cliffs under their watchful eyes. Jace taught it simple tricks, while Ahuli showed it the ways of the desert, the lessons of survival, and the importance of trust. Neighbors and travelers noticed the changes. Humans and Apache descendant colonists began working together, inspired by the courage and cooperation of Jace and Ahuli. The tale of the lone human cowboy and the fierce Apache warrior who protected a fragile life spread across the canyons and settlements, becoming a story of hope and strength. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jace and Ahuli stood at the edge of a cliff, the baby perched safely on a rock between them. The desert stretched endlessly before them, vast and full of possibilities. "You have changed me," Ahuli said quietly. "I never thought I would find someone I could trust, someone I could rely on, someone I could care for." Jace smiled, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "And you have changed me, Ahuli. I used to survive alone. Now, I want to live with someone who matters, someone I care about." She stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then let us live together, Jace Carson. Let us protect life, love, and hope. Let us be stronger, because of each other." Jace took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything they had endured and overcome. "I promise," he said. "Whatever comes, I am yours, as you are mine." The baby chirped softly, fluttering its wings as if celebrating their promise. The desert wind carried their laughter and the soft sounds of joy across the canyon. Red Mesa, harsh and unforgiving as it was, had given them something precious: trust, courage, and love. As night fell, the twin moons rose, casting silver light over the cliffs and desert sands. Jace, Ahuli, and the baby stood together. A small family bound not only by survival but by heart, bravery, and unwavering loyalty. The raiders would not return, not for a long time, and when they did, Jace and Ahuli would be ready. But for now, there was peace, and in that peace, they found something rare and beautiful. The knowledge that humans could rise above danger with courage, kindness, and love, and that even in the harshest lands, life and hope could flourish. Jace looked at Ahuli, his hand brushing hers, and he felt a sense of belonging he had never known. "We did it," he said softly. "Yes," she replied, her eyes shining with emotion. "Together, we did it." The desert was quiet, the stars beginning to shine, and the baby chirped once more, small wings flapping in the gentle night air. Red Mesa had witnessed their courage, their trust, and their hearts, and in the vastness of the desert, Two humans had proven that bravery, love, and loyalty could triumph over any darkness. And so, beneath the twin moons, a new legacy began. A legacy of courage, heart, and the unbreakable bond between a human cowboy, an Apache warrior, and the fragile life that had brought them together. They were no longer just survivors. They were guardians, partners, and, above all, they were a family. The desert wind whispered through the canyons, carrying their story to every corner of Red Mesa. A story of bravery, a story of love, a story of humanity at its finest. And in the quiet of the night, under the silver light of the moons, their hearts beat as one, ready for whatever the future might hold.